So the most anticipated moment has arrived. After all the teasers OnePlus has been given out in the last few weeks, this is it. This, my friends, is the new OnePlus 6T. Oh, sorry, 7T. Now, just to set the record for you guys, the OnePlus 7T is not replacing or succeeding the OnePlus 7 Pro. But what it does is bring a lot of the features from the OnePlus 7 Pro at a lower price point. How much, you may ask? Well, it's going to be priced at $600. Notice I didn't mention starts at, and that's because there's only one model of this device in two different colors, Glacier Blue and Frosted Silver, and you only get 8GB of RAM and 128GB of storage, or 256GB in select markets. Pricing could change in that case. So it's $100 cheaper than an equivalent spec to OnePlus 7 Pro, but you may be asking to yourselves, what am I really losing? Well, in this video, I'm going to walk you through the differences between the OnePlus 7 Pro and the OnePlus 7T, and interestingly enough, OnePlus decided to add some features to the 7T, which are currently not on the 7 Pro, which is a bit odd. So yeah, let's discuss about that. But first, a quick message from our sponsor.
The new Be Quiet Dark Rock Slim Cooler offers high physical clearance for any memory module thanks to its slim heatsink and the low-profile 120mm airflow optimized fan, so you get great cooling, low noise, easy installation, and no issues for high-profile RAM. Check it out below.
Alright, so let's start with the design, and I want to give huge props to OnePlus for not implementing curved screens around the edges. This alone is a huge upgrade rather than a downgrade from the 7 Pro, in my opinion. That means you don't have to worry about warped videos at the top and bottom when you're watching them in landscape mode. Plus, it's a lot more comfortable to hold compared to the 7 Pro. The corners are less rounded, which I like, and the back is wrapped around the same matte frosted glass texture like the 7 Pro. The Glacier Blue is lighter than the Nebula Blue on the 7 Pro, which I don't mind personally, and for $600, this phone feels great. It's a bit lighter than the 7 Pro, and size-wise, well, they're pretty much the same, albeit a few millimeters shaved off here and there, but honestly, I wasn't able to notice that. Moving on to the display, I think most of you knew that this was coming. It's a 90Hz AMOLED screen, but the catch is the resolution is set to 1080p plus versus QHD plus on the 7 Pro, and I can't complain about that because the screen is still pretty sharp, and in classic OnePlus fashion, they give you the option to switch between different color profiles, including DCI-P3, and it looks great. But I did want to bring up an issue that I experienced with the display. Basically, the first unit that I got was showing off some horizontal banding issues, but I did get a replacement that seemed to have addressed that. I'm not sure if this is a common or going to be a common problem for a lot of the retail samples, but I thought that was worth bringing up. Now, the teardrop notch is still here like the 6T, but they've made it a bit smaller, so no pop-up style cameras like the 7 Pro, and I don't mind that. You still get dual front-facing speakers just like the 7 Pro, so there's fantastic audio projection, as well as it's loud and clear, so no complaints there. The in-display fingerprint scanner has been imported from the 7 Pro and slapped onto the 7T, but interestingly enough, as I was comparing the responsiveness of the sensors, I noticed that the 7 Pro was still a lot faster than the 7T. And I'm not sure if that has to do with Android 10 running on this device. Perhaps OnePlus has to optimize that. Remember how I mentioned that OnePlus added some features to the 7T that unfortunately isn't on the 7 Pro? Well, here's the list. So the 7T now comes with a faster SoC, in this case the Snapdragon 855 Plus, which is a slightly overclocked version of the standard 855 on the OnePlus 7 Pro. Now, I did ask OnePlus about this, and they said that they wanted to bring the best SoC that's currently available in the market right now to consumers, and I appreciate that. Now, are you going to notice a significant difference in terms of performance between these devices? No, at least I wasn't able to tell, because the phone still feels snappy. I mean, you've got that 90Hz screen, which it just increases the perception of fluidity while you're using the display or while using the phone in general, which is awesome. Benchmarks, they do say a story, but there's just so much more than that. Then there's Warp Charge 30T. There's the T that we've been looking for. So it's 23% faster compared to Warp Charge 30 that's supported on the OnePlus 7 Pro, and OP was able to do this by optimizing the internal resistance of the battery to accept a faster charging rate, but also optimize it so that it's not running hotter while you're using the device when it's plugged in. Now, I did validate this, and yes, it is noticeably faster than Warp Charge 30, which is cool. But it also sucks for users who have the OnePlus 7 Pro. Then there's macro mode added to the 7T, which I think is really cool. It allows you to get super close to the subject as little as 2.5 centimeters away without losing focus. And as you can see, you can get pretty creative with it, and the images coming out look fantastic. You can get really, and I mean really close to subjects to capture cool perspectives. Unfortunately, this is only a hardware upgrade, which means it won't be available as a software update to the 7 Pro because OnePlus has actually tweaked the camera a little bit to include that feature, which really sucks because the 7 Pro is their flagship device, and not having something like this, it just, I don't know, it probably just kills the value proposition for this phone in the first place. So yeah, I think that's a bummer. Speaking of the cameras, aside from the macro mode, the sensors are basically a copy and paste from the 7 Pro. So you get this triple camera layout with an ultra wide angle, a standard 48 megapixel sensor, and a telephoto lens. Interestingly enough, you only get a 2x optical range versus 3x on the 7 Pro, and the sensor itself is a bit of an upgrade. It's 12 megapixel f2.2 versus 8 megapixels with an f2.4 aperture on the 7 Pro. And as you can see, the pictures coming out of these sensors look really good. It's pretty sharp, and it maintains a good balance of contrast and saturation. Obviously, if you pixel peep, you're going to notice that it's not as detailed as the Pixel 3. The color tones on the 7T looked a bit warmer compared to the 7 Pro, which I thought was interesting. And finally, in low light, the camera is decent. You see, it's not super noisy or anything. You do lose a bit of detail, especially when you're involving people as subjects, as skin tones don't look that great, but it's respectable. Perhaps a Gcam mod could help address this. OnePlus has also improved the video recording capabilities on the 7T, so now it combines both the EIS and the OIS to create a super stable mode feature that essentially gives you pretty stable footage. Here's a quick sample. Alright, so this is the video test on the OnePlus 7T. I have super stable turned on, but the catch is it can only shoot at 1080p, so you can't do 4K with this stabilization feature. Guys, I'm actually really impressed with how smooth the footage is right now, because I'm walking at a pretty constant or normal pace and the footage looks totally usable. All right, so with all of that being said, let's talk about that huge circular camera bump. I'm not really a fan of it, guys. It's big and the protrusion is very much noticeable when you lay the phone flat down on a desk. I would have preferred a subtle layout like what's on the 7 Pro, but this is something that can easily be addressed if you put a case on it, if you're into that. No, but seriously, let me know what you guys think about this circular camera bump on the 7T. Is it something that you're okay with, or would you rather go with something that's a little bit more subtle, like what's found on the 7 Pro? I like the one on the 7 Pro personally because it's kind of low profile compared to this, but personal preference. Finally, I want to go over the new software enhancements with the Oxygen OS. The 7T comes shipped with Android 10, and OnePlus has made customization a little more intuitive. So now there's a separate tab for customization alone, which lets you easily access wallpapers, clock style for your lock screen, fingerprint animation. You can also monitor accent colors in real time, change the tone to a system-wide dark mode, which looks great. You can also change the shape of the settings icons as well as quickly switch icon packs and change the system font. Basically, you don't have to fetch for these options. It's right there, and I appreciate that. However, they did take away the subtle back and home bar, which was on Android 9. So now you're only left with the standard back, home, and recent layout, or full screen mode, which I'm actually enjoying quite a bit. So you get a thin horizontal bar, kind of like what's on iOS. If you swipe up from the bottom, that takes you to the home screen. To go back, you can simply swipe inward from the lower left or lower right edge of the screen. To bring up recent apps, you simply swipe up from the bottom and pause. And to switch between apps, you simply swipe left or right with the bottom bar. It did take me a couple of days to get used to this new full screen layout with the bar at the bottom, but I'm glad that they're actually giving users the option to customize the navigation bar to the old school, square, round, and triangle layout, which is pretty nice. One last thing that I want to touch base on is battery life. It's not the greatest. It's still very much similar to the OnePlus 7 Pro, which makes sense because the OnePlus 7 Pro has a 4000 mAh battery and a Quad HD Plus resolution display at 90 Hz. So there's that draining factor over there. The OnePlus 7T, on the other hand, has a 3800 milliamp hour battery, but the resolution is a bit slower, but it's still clocked at 90 Hertz. So that's the draining factor as well, which means it's very much similar, nowhere closer to the OnePlus 6T from last year, which had phenomenal battery life. I was able to get 2 days of use from that device, which was fantastic, but that's unfortunately not the biggest forte on the 7T. So I think it's time to conclude. And guys, I'm really impressed with what the 7T brings to the table, but at the same time, I feel bad for people who bought the 7 Pro because the 7T brings like 90% of the features from the 7 Pro at a lower price point. Most notably, it's the 90 Hz AMOLED display. I mean, that by itself is a fantastic feature to bring at this price point. Also, the display is flat, which makes it more practical to use compared to the 7 Pro. One of my major downsides with this device was the curved screen. It was super distracting when watching content, and I didn't really enjoy it, but this is just a much better experience. The camera performance is good, especially if you put them in really good lighting situations. In low light, it's certainly not the best, but I think my favorite feature is that new macro mode. I mean, you can get really creative with it, but it really sucks that it's not on the 7 Pro. I mean, I don't know at this point. I mean, why would someone actually pick the 7 Pro over the 7T? I think the only reason you'd get the 7 Pro is because of a higher resolution screen, but aside from that, I would hands down recommend the 7T over the 7 Pro. And if you've been waiting to buy a OnePlus device, now is probably the time to pick it up. That being said, we have phones like the Pixel 4 coming into the market and some other phones entering into the arena. And for $600, I think the 7T certainly sets a stage, or I think it sets a benchmark for itself compared to the competition. So I'm curious to see what the end of 2019 or the rest of 2019 is going to turn out into. Let me know what you guys think about the OnePlus 7T in the comments down below. Would you actually consider the 7T over the 7 Pro if you're shopping for a smartphone right now? Or would you wait for the Pixel 4? Because who knows what the pricing is going to be on that device. Anyways, guys, I'm your boy with Hardware Canucks. Thank you so much for watching. Make sure to check out some relevant content over here. Subscribe and hit that notification bell so you don't miss out on new videos that we publish. I'm signing off, and I'll talk to you guys in the next one.